Welcome, welcome, welcome to Getting a Bigger Gob On, the podcast that encourages women to be seen, heard, and absolutely unforgettable so they can create a life they love. As always, I'm your hostess, Sharon Eden, the Wild Elder, and welcome to Ep.5, How Love and Community Fueled My Comeback, with the always warm and loving Penny Power, OBE. Penny helps business owners thrive by embedding true community into their lives, fostering belonging, connection, and growth so success comes without pushing and with great peace and love. So a big, warm welcome, Penny. I'm delighted you're here.
Oh, I've been so excited about this conversation with you. I feel so privileged to have this time with you, Sharon, like this. It's wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, as we've only got 20 minutes, we're going to get to it. And what's your core message for our listeners?
Well, very much along the lines of what you just said, in a way. It's make sure you lead the life you want. And my core message is the power of community around you, so that you can get a real sense of who you are and the people that bring out the best in you. Yeah. So I believe deeply in love in business and love all around us, and that love is an energy, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I talk about love as the glue that holds the universe together.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but there's just, I think a lot of the time we're fighting the opposite, which is fear and all these things that are dragging us into not the best version of us.
No, but did you know that fear and love cannot coexist? So that actually, when you're fearful, if you focus on love, do a little exercise focusing on love, the fear will dissipate, because the two of them, you can't feel the two at the same time.
I absolutely believe what you're saying and know it in my heart. I am slightly programmed to go into fear.
Yes.
Life has made me that way from childhood through life circumstances. I literally ask my energy to shift to my heart. It's wonderful. So different when you can do that.
Yeah, fabulous. So that's a good tip. We're into tips already before we've gone anywhere. And for our listeners, try it. It might happen the very first time you try it, and it might not. But certainly with practice, you will feel the shift. So I'm going to ask you, because your story is so wonderful. So, years and years ago, you and your husband, Thomas, were innovators in the very first social network that existed before, I believe, before Facebook and LinkedIn.
Oh, yes. A long time before them. Yeah,
absolutely. So you were into social networking years and years ago. And then, unfortunately, there was an absolute tragedy what happened to eAcademy. And by the way, listeners, I was a member of eAcademy all those years ago. But something awful happened, and it kind of stripped you of what you were doing. And I'd love you to tell us about how you found your way back to being seen, heard, and unforgettable.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, I think, first of all, it is really important to address the loss, because there's a lot of people that will experience loss and, had plan A and they believed it was wonderful, and then plan B came along. And I think it took me a long time to go through the acceptance of that. And it wasn't just the acceptance of the business. Our business, social networking business, really relied on people like you and I who had grown up in the world where having deep connections and deep conversations with one another was vital. And we knew how important that was to see people, make them feel significant, build trusting relationships. That's what social networking really is all about. And it's a beautiful thing, whether it's online or you do it offline in person. But it was 2009 when social media took over, and we went from people being in their truth to people holding an identity, people having friends to people having followers. And our challenge really was, I believe it's a global one, where it obviously hit us as a business model, but it's one that we've all experienced. And the comeback, I think through anything where you have a significant loss, you obviously, for us, it was a loss of identity, a loss of income, plus a vast amount of debt for us. And there was a big, going through the grief of it, but going through needing to keep going, keep making money, just keep surviving. You don't have a lot of time for reflection. And I think I didn't allow the grief. And I think that was really important. So I don't think the comeback could really happen until I had gone through a massive process of grief and acceptance and finding myself again. And so Academy came to an end in 2012. And while I was doing other projects that was bringing in income and to a certain extent keeping my identity in the market, it was me in a different persona, because it was me as an entrepreneur, not me as the head of a beautiful community.
Yeah.
And building a business and having investors and having a lot of pressure that didn't suit my way of being. So for 6 years, my whole being was hijacked really because of survival.
Yeah.
And so coming back, there's a saying, it's easier to come than to come back. And it's hard to come back.
Sure.
And it really, I went through a process of massive self-awareness. And that included, stripping my life back, financially stripping it back. What really is important to me? What do I really need in my life to be Penny and to be the person that I wanted to show up in the world? And then being heard. Well, I love the saying, there are no statues to the critics. That's part of Theodore Roosevelt's speech and his Daring Greatly speech. And back in 2001, when I was first started to do a talk, and it was for BT, a lovely lady called Jane Swift, who ran the Women's Network, they asked me to do a talk about, the conversation I was always having, which is about the importance of love in business. And it was too much to talk about love back in 2001 in the business world.
Sure.
Love was seen as a feminine energy that was weak, and, we had to be big growling women to hold our space. And I remember the speech we reframed it to emotional wealth leads to financial wealth. And, basically you could reframe that now into emotional intelligence leads to strong business. There's loads of ways you could wrap that around. When I was ready to come back in 2018, it was because I had spent time with a psychologist. I'd spent time grieving. We had also had some huge personal family traumas that had reset priorities.
Yeah.
And we had paid down this enormous debt. I wrote my book. And when my book, Business is Personal, was published, I said to Thomas, look, I might become a midwife or a vicar as a result. Didn't know whether the business world would accept me, but that no statues to the critics is that you have to keep to your track of the change you want to see in the world and what you believe in. And then in 2020, Hannah actually said to us, the world needs community again. And community is very different to networks. Businesses need networks. People need community. Absolutely. And networking is fundamental, but we humans need love and connection.
Absolutely. And I believe part of your comeback was actually joining a community yourself, where you were supported, seen, heard, and I've no doubt unforgettable too.
Well, it's very nice because when you're always in service to people, sometimes I still find it hard to receive. Yeah. And in 2018, Hannah was recovering from her trauma and doing very well. She was living in Bali and she was her trauma had been that she'd been abducted and raped in 2016 in Morzine when she was away skiing by a very traumatic one. Thomas had cancer. I was exhausted. I was psychologically, physically, emotionally drained. And I sort of thought, I don't have a lot of people that relate to me in my social world.
Yeah.
And in my business world, I didn't have enough business friendships, really.
Yeah.
And I stepped into our church. And when I walked in, I felt like a fraud because I didn't really have this connection to whatever the church believed in. But the vicar was allowed me to be very honest about that. And I said, I'm just here for love and connection and just the energy and that sense of community where they wanted nothing from me. And I just experienced it. And it was, very, very beautiful.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for telling us that, Penny. Wonderful. So I'm stopping talking because I'm aware of the enormity of some of the things you said and the impact it might have on some of our listeners. So if it has had an impact on you, please Google the topic. There is loads of help out there for you if it's relating to your own experience.
I think that's a very wise thing to say, my wise elder. In fact, it's really interesting you say that because when Hannah came back from Morzine and Googled, the first thing she saw was never go out with a girl that's been raped. They're a nightmare. And she said, I'm going to out-Google that with my own content. So if people Google Hannah Power rape, there is some really supportive stuff as well.
Excellent. That's wonderful.
And Hannah and I continue to support people who contact her.
Great. Thank you for telling us that, Penny. And by the way, if you're listening, Hannah is Penny's daughter and a gorgeous one at that.
Yeah.
So, Penny, I this is a bit where I ask you to give some tips from your own experience on how to make a comeback to get seen, heard, and unforgettable.
Oh gosh. Okay. So I can only go by my own experience. And I think we can only expect little nudges. I don't think, I think part of the pressure of this world is we think we need to be transforming into, metamorphosizing almost, overnight. And life experiences are not like that. I think Hannah has this phrase, peaceful progress. Yeah. And so the first thing I would say as a tip is, go gentle on yourself because you will evolve into a really strong position because your adversity, your wisdom is going to be your power and it's going to be what makes people love you because of the level of empathy you have. So my stages were, I talked about the fact I had to go into acceptance and also remove blame. There were people that I could blame. I could blame Clydesdale Bank. There was loads of people I could blame. But ultimately, you have to take responsibility and show up for yourself.
Absolutely.
I think ego is a really interesting thing. I think we talked about love at the top of the show here, but I think, the opposite we talked about is fear. And I think when you're in fear, you're in control, you're in ego, you're seeking certainty. And
can I just put in a word in favor of ego?
Yes.
Because without ego, we cannot function in this world of form. And it's definitely a part of your ego that holds the fear.
I think I'm going to share the ego that isn't useful when I'm talking about letting go of.
Yeah.
Of course it's important. We're in a human experience here. We're not ethereal beings floating around. We have to have a human experience, which requires us to be very balanced, not to have too much ego and not to have too little ego. It's a balance.
Absolutely. And I think one of your tips, if I remember rightly, is to allow yourself to be 100% real, open, and loving.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, this is where I would lead to that, because ego can stop you doing those things, because ego in the used in the wrong way is all about your own identity and how the world will serve you. And the person I've always been from a young age, I'm at 22, being called a servant leader.
Yeah.
And it's just reversing your energy away from yourself.
Absolutely. And we talked a bit, I think, at the beginning about being of service is, give and you shall receive.
Absolutely.
Really.
Absolutely.
So I just want to remind listeners of your core message, which is that business is no longer just about transactions and strategy. It's about emotional connection. And when we feel we belong, we create, grow, and lead with resilience and joy. And I'm going to expand it a bit, because I think that is a recipe for all kinds of relationships, not just in business. Would you agree?
Totally agree. I think, that Tony Robbins talks about our 6 human emotional needs, which I love. And one of them is contribution, another is significance, helping others feel significant, love and connection. I think these are all absolutely critical parts of who we are as human.
So, Penny, have you got an offer that would help our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we're all self-empowered to be the person that I've just described. I'm only talking about being human. Yeah, I mean, I've got a book that I wrote in 2018, which is lovely, that people say it's on Amazon. Business is Personal. It's also available as an audio, which I know a lot of people like to do that. I would even say, if somebody says I haven't even got enough money to do that, the PDF, I can send that to anyone.
Oh, that's wonderful.
As a PDF if they want it. I believe strongly in the messages that I obviously give in my book about and how it can empower people.
Absolutely. Thank you, Penny. And if you're listening, the exact link to Penny's book will be in the show notes. And then, Penny, how can people connect with you very briefly?
Well, I've got pennypower.co.uk. It's where I talk about the importance of human touch in an AI world. So they can connect with me there. They can find me on LinkedIn. And my business website is BIP100, BIP100.club.
Super. So, Penny, thank you so much for being on my podcast and sharing your experience and wisdom and your love, actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a lovely conversation with you.
Thank you, Penny. And thank you to everyone listening. If this resonates with you and you're hungry for more, join my Wild Elder community by subscribing to my weekly newsletter, where I share fresh insights, top priority updates, behind the scenes stuff, and cutting edge tools for deep personal growth. And as a welcome gift, you'll receive a no BS chapter, what spirituality is and isn't, very straight talking, from my Amazon bestseller, Rediscovered. Thank you again for listening. We'd love to hear how you're getting on with the tips. And do keep an eye out for the next inspiring episode of Getting a Bigger Gob On. Until next time, goodbye.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.